Oh, yeah. It's that time of year where we are just a couple of days away from the AP test. Now, oh! Okay, now you might be wondering why I'm playing Another One Bites the Dust. That's not a very good precursor for you taking the AP test in what might be tomorrow or it might be 2 days or 3 days whenever you're listening to this. No, this is why I'm playing this song. Because the people who try to cheat right now are going to be biting the dust. They're going to be destroyed. I'm telling you this now, just so you know, because you're listening to this right now. Do not mess with me. You need to listen to this complete, however many parts this ends up being, series on the Key People Review and do it yourself, or you will be caught, you will get no credit, and it will be a complete waste of your time. Well, maybe. I guess you'd still learn about a few people. But there's huge rewards here, huge rewards that you definitely want. So here are my specific instructions. As I go over each slide, you need to write the information that's on the slide. So, for example, let me just go to this one really quick. This is what you need to write. On Irving Janis's card, you just need to write groupthink. You can add anything else you want to it. If you want to define, give examples, but you at least have to have what I write. So if I get to a slide where I have a ton of information, you might want to pause it and then write everything down and then, do what you need to do. But it does have to be in the slide. There will be things that I tell you to add to it as well. So not everything will be on there, but that's the very minimum. So everything that's on the slide needs to be on there. Then if I give you specific instructions to do something, you better do that as well. This has to be turned in Monday. Most of you I will see in the morning, but if I don't, I'll collect it from you before you walk into the testing room for the AP test in the afternoon. This is an all or none deal. I don't know how many pages this is. It's 17 pages long, front and back. If you do every slide but one of them, you get no credit. Like the all or none principle of the neuron. Either you're going to be firing or you're not going to be firing. So do it all. Here's your bonus. I'm going to replace your 3 lowest formative grades with 100s. If you have 3 zeros, that could raise you in the upwards of 10% your overall grade. That's pretty big. Pretty big. I mean, if your lowest grade is a 90, it's not going to help you out that much. But if you have some higher grades than that, well, you get the idea. And then if you score lower than a 70 on exam 5, this will also replace your lowest grade for this test only because of the time frame and me wanting you to get this done before the AP exam. You'll be able to get that done before, or that's how you'll do it. That's how we're going to get it done before the AP exam so that you can study for that. So those are the instructions. That's what you will need to do. And here we go. We'll rock and roll. We're going to start with writing your name, but you must follow my specific instruction in writing your name. So upper left-hand corner, I want you to write your first name, your middle initial, and your last name as well. So make sure you put your middle initial in there, or I will know that you have possibly cheated. Because here's what most people are going to do. They're going to go like, oh, I got to write my name on this. They probably won't write it in the upper left-hand corner, but if they do, if they pick up on that or you remember to tell them that, most people don't write their middle initial when they write their full name. So we're going to get them cheaters. That's right. We're going to get them cheaters. Then over on the right-hand corner, I just want you to put the number of the period of class you are in. So don't put a P. Don't write period. Just write a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. And then follow that number with a 1. Okay? So if you're in period 7, you're going to put 71. If you're in period 2, you're going to put a 21. They're going to have no idea what you're doing, and we're going to get those cheaters. You know what? I'm so pumped up about busting cheaters right now. I even wrote a song about it. You want to hear it? And I'll sing it more to you as we go through it. There are lots of verses. Me and my daughters will have some dances for you throughout. But here's my song. We're going to get them cheetahs. We're going to get them cheetahs. Oh, yeah, we're going to get them cheetahs. All right, let's go. Let's go to Irving Janis here with groupthink. Now, these first 4 people that I have, you're probably like, I don't remember about learning these people. Well, it's because you did not learn about these people. But we did learn about their terms and concepts, and these were terms and concepts that I wanted to go over in this review. ones that I know we've kind of been struggling with, or make sure that we're clear on, even one experiment that I think you need a heads up on. But let's just talk about groupthink first. All right? So groupthink is when you are with a group of people, and instead of thinking as individuals, you think as a group. And I want to give you a couple examples here. So, hey, listen, all you have to write in your slide is groupthink. If you want to add more notes, that's totally up to you. So I'll just kind of remind you of that. So if you're in a group project, no, let's do something. Well, we'll do that example, then we'll do another one. So you're in a group project, and you have an assignment that you're working on. Somebody starts throwing out an idea. You got a tight deadline. That will affect groupthink as well. You got a lot of pressure put on you to get a good grade on this project. You have a leader, someone who's doing a lot of the talking. What tends to happen is we stop sharing individual thought that might disagree with the group. Now, it doesn't mean that you disagree with the group. It just means that if you have other ideas or things that you might think could occur, you don't say it. This was one of the things that possibly attributed to, and here's my second example, to the Challenger explosion in the 1980s, where a spaceship, we were sending people to the moon, including a teacher. A female teacher was on this spaceship, an astronaut going up to the moon. Not the moon. Yeah, the moon. Yeah, I'm sorry. What other planet will we be going to? Mars? No. Anyways, well, maybe one day, right? Actually, I think the Chinese are trying to get to Mars right now. Okay, I'll try to stop doing the side stories, because if we do that, this thing could end up being 10 hours long. So anyways, Challenger blew up off liftoff, and they all died, everybody on there. There were people, engineers, who thought that there were problems with the spaceship before they shot it. They launched it out into outer space. But because of the pressure they had, because of the time restraint, they needed to get this ship up in the air, some of these people did not speak their mind and did not share their individual thought. That is groupthink, and that's how groupthink can lead to an inaccurate perception. All right? Irving Janis, groupthink. You don't need to know his name. Just know the term. Muzaffar Sharif. Okay, this is a new experiment that I wanted to teach you. Recently, I saw it in another textbook, and it didn't fit with this. It didn't fit with any new unit recently, so I thought I'm going to come back to this before the end of the year and just kind of make sure they're familiar with it. Now, what I think you'll be questioned on is in-group or out-group bias or stereotypes and discrimination. I don't think you'll be asked a question on the Robbers Cave experiment, but it's kind of interesting, and I wanted to tell you about it, especially because it's so close to home. In Oklahoma, I forget the city, but it's an actual campground called Robbers Cave Campground. Muzaffar Sharif did an experiment where they invited 22 boys to be a part of a camp. It was a Boy Scout camp. They separated them into two groups of 11 boys. Neither group knew that the other group existed. And there were two phases to this experiment. The first phase was bonding. So the 11 boys who were together in one group bonded together, and they had all these tasks and goals that they had to work and achieve, just like you would do at any Boy Scout camp. And they formed their in-groups. They liked each other because they were working towards common tasks, which tends to happen when we work towards common goals. Mirror exposure effect, just being around each other, they start to like each other more, and they formed bonds. In the second phase of the experiment, they were exposed to the other group, and they found out that another group of boys existed that they would be competing against in all of these different challenges. Well, through these challenges, the in-group bias got stronger and the out-group bias grew stronger as well, which led to stereotypes and discrimination. The out-group bias, the boys felt very negatively about the characteristics of the other boys, even though they didn't know them. They really didn't know them other than the competition that was being done. But their views of each other got stronger. Their positive views of each other got stronger once they were introduced to this other group. But I want to remind you what a stereotype and a discrimination is, and prejudice as well. Let's kind of go over all these. Stereotypes are generalizations about a people group that you might have, like everybody of this group is highly intelligent. Everybody of this group likes to eat pizza. Everybody in this group likes the color yellow. Those are stereotypes. They are generally not true for everyone in the group. Now, could they be for a few small select people? Absolutely. But not for everyone. That's a stereotype. And stereotypes can be formed from discrimination and prejudice. And ethnocentrism. You know what? Why don't we do this? Let's add ethnocentrism to this as well and kind of go over that really quickly. And, of course, then we need also prejudice. Ethnocentrism is when you think your race or ethnicity is better than anyone else's. So you think it's superior. Has to be race or ethnicity, okay? Which can lead to prejudice. Prejudice is thinking that someone is less than you or thinking negatively about them because of their differences from you. And this could be skin color, or it could be a like or a preference as well. So it's just thinking. Discrimination is an action towards that person because of your prejudice. So now we are going to treat them differently because of my prejudice, which is stemming from, if we're talking about racism, from my ethnocentrism. Okay. Now, there was no racism or prejudice involved in the Robbers Cave experiment. It was in-group, out-group is what we see, but these terms are kind of all connected to that because even we can form in-group and out-group with our own races as well that we identify with. Okay. So that is the Robbers Cave experiment. You know what? Let's go back to this one really quick. Just draw me a little cave. Bottom right-hand corner, just doodle a little cave right over here. I don't know, like something that a bear might live in, like a little hole here. And yeah, just draw it. Can be horrible. To take you 3 seconds and be done with it. Again, hey, if I ever start moving too fast, just pause it, right? You can pause YouTube. Just pause. Good. Okay. Let's go to Robert Z. We'll just go with Z. The mirror exposure effect. The mirror exposure effect is the more we're exposed to something, the greater preference we have towards it, right? He did an experiment on 2 experiments that are quite interesting. One was on chickens. And when the chickens were inside of the egg, he played notes, musical notes, tones. And he found that the chickens, after being born, would have more of a favorable response to the same tones that were played to them while they were in the egg. Okay, so they've been exposed to it. They like those tones more than other tones. And that was just through body language that we saw with the chickens. That's kind of a weird experiment. This one is probably the one that is more interesting, that would be valuable to you on an FRQ. They had groups of people, and these groups of people were exposed to Chinese symbols. And later, after being exposed to these Chinese symbols for a series of time, this was of course over a couple of days, they would show lots of different Chinese symbols, some of which they had been exposed to before and others that they had not. And they asked them to rate them on a level of how much they liked the symbol. Well, the people who rated the symbols higher were the ones that they had been exposed to. And then the ones that they had never seen before, they rated lower. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. There were so many symbols being used, and assuming that you did not know the Chinese language, you would never remember which ones you had been exposed to and which ones you hadn't been exposed to. But the people had a much greater preference for the ones that they had been exposed to before. Mirror exposure effect with people is the same. The people you're around, you tend to form a bond with. And I think I shared this example in the classroom the other day, but if you were in a plane, you got a plane crash and crashed on an island, the people who you were sitting around, who you said hello to or were talking to, those would be the people who you would form the bond with first, and that you would like and kind of create a loyalty to or a friendship with first. So mirror exposure is just being exposed to someone over time. I want you to now do this. Go find the Chinese symbol for the first letter of your first name and draw it on this slide. So mine is an R, so I would go to Google and I would find, just type in Chinese symbol for letter R, if that's your first name, and then draw it. Now, there might be some different ones. I don't care. Just draw one that looks like that it might be. Okay? All right, let's continue on here. Well, you're going to go do that. You're going to pause it, probably, right? And then you're going to come back. All right, Biblatani. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce his last name. And this will be the last person that we haven't heard of before, and then we'll transition to people that you have heard of and that you should recall. Social loafing is when we put forth less effort when other people are present doing the same thing. There was an experiment done by him where he had people that were blindfolded and had headphones on. And he would give them an instruction to yell. And with the experimental group, they were told that there were other people around them while they were yelling. And they were yelling also. And to try to create as much noise as they could. The control group was told that there was no one else in the room and that they were to yell as loud as they can to try to create as much noise as they could. Well, what he found as an experiment was where, with the experimental group, when people believed that other people were present, they didn't yell as loud. They yelled loud, but they didn't yell as loud. In fact, it was about an 80% effort that was put forth compared to the 100% effort that was put forth when one believed that they were the only one in the room making the noise. And that is bibliotane. Another example is if you might be like on a tandem bicycle. So there are 2 or 3 or 4 of you riding a bicycle, like one bike built for 4 people. You put forth less wattage, experimentation has shown, when you're in that group than you would if you were alone on the bicycle yourself. So social loafing is putting forth less effort because you are in a group. If you were alone, you would put forth more effort and energy. All right. Do I look like I'm messing with you right now? I'm going to get those cheetahs. In the beginning of psychology, right? Wilhelm Wundt, professor at the University of Leipzig, Germany, 1879, goes to the board and says, hey, we got physiology, we have philosophy. Sorry, drew a blank there. So physiology is the study of the body, philosophy is the study of the mind. He believed we needed a subject that studied the interaction of these two, of how the mind and the body make us who we are as a human being, and wanted to call it psychology. The psyche is the mind, ology is the study of, but really it's the study of the mind and human behavior, and animal behavior as well. As we see, we do a lot of experimentation on animals and the study of animals. So psychology is born and birthed out of Germany. Wilhelm Wundt is known as the father of psychology. In fact, above Wilhelm, please write father. Okay, so father of psychology, a lot of people get this confused and think it might be Sigmund Freud. It's not. It was Wilhelm Wundt. Okay? The school board did tell him that he needed to start a lab, if you remember, for it to be a science, because psychology is a science, that he needed to create a lab and do human experimentation. So he said, well, heck yeah, I'll do it, however you say that in German. And he starts an experiment with human behavior, testing reaction times to dropping balls. And he calls this process introspection, where we self-examine, where we report how we're feeling, what we're experiencing, what I'm going through. So if I'm depressed, introspection would be me sitting down, telling you how I am feeling about everything that is going on in my life that I think could be connected to my depression. That is the process of introspection. Introspection is the tool that he used to try to answer the question, why are we the way that we are? And that approach is called structuralism. Okay? And let's make that nice and beautiful. Structuralism is answering this question of human behavior through self-process. It's taking you apart piece by piece by piece by piece to try to understand why you might be depressed, or what is the purpose of your behavior, whatever that behavior might have. Give you this analogy again. It's taking a car apart, every single piece, trying to identify those different pieces and what their function is to get a sense of why we have cars. What is the purpose of a car? What is the purpose of an automobile? We analyze every piece. And when introspection, when I tell you about everything that's going on in my life, a doctor would analyze all those little pieces to try to understand why I am depressed. That is structuralism. We are breaking down the structure entirely. This counters with functionalism, which is that your next slide? It is. I don't even like functionalist. Well, that's what he was, but really we're talking about functionalism. So William James in America at Harvard University says, Wundt, you're nuts. You're wasting your time. What we really shouldn't be doing is getting inside people's minds, because we can't trust what's inside people's minds. They're just self-reporting. There's bias. People lie. They're confused. There's dementia. We can't trust what we can't see inside someone's head. That was his main argument against structuralism. So William James creates functionalism. Let's look at the function of the person through my own eyes because I can trust what I can see. And this is empiricism. Empiricism is the tool that we use to do our research for functionalism. And it is research through observation. That might be called empirical research or empiricism. In fact, why don't you do this? Draw 2 eyeballs somewhere on this slide. 2 eyeballs. Okay, but here's where we're going to get them cheaters, all right? So you're drawing your 2 eyeballs right now. I want you to put 4 eyelashes on the left eye. Okay, don't make these eyes too fancy. I mean, you do whatever you want. But 4 eyelashes on the left eye, 5 eyelashes on the right eye. You think a cheater's going to pick that up? Heck no, they're not going to. We're going to get them cheetahs. Oh yeah, we're going to get them cheetahs. Back to functionalism. So now, if we have a car, we don't take it apart. We just look at it. We watch it. We watch it drive around to discover its function and its purpose. If you're depressed, I'm just going to watch you. I'm going to watch your behaviors. I can trust what I see with my own eyes. I am therefore going to draw a conclusion of why it is that you're depressed. I don't need to get inside your mind. And we have approaches that do that today. Now, structuralism and functionalism no longer exist. Really, structuralism kind of leads to, if we go back here, you don't need to write this, but structuralism has kind of roots in psychoanalysis, or psychoanalysis has roots in structuralism. Functionalism, man, it's directly leads to the creation of behaviorism, which we'll talk about later when we get there. I just kind of hurt my hand when I banged it on the table. Get too excited about this cheating stuff. I'll try to chill out. Sorry, that was a little over the top. Anyways, so know these 2 things: structuralism and functionalism are the original schools of psychology. The original approaches. They don't exist anymore today. Structuralism uses introspection, which is getting inside someone's head, which is really someone getting inside their own head. Functionalism uses empiricism, which is research through observation. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. Shall we continue? Mary Whiton Calkins, a functionalist because she was a student of William James. Remember, she was kind of the first one who really deserved her degree in psychology, her doctorate degree in psychology, but the university wouldn't give it to her. But where she did get a significant recognition was that she was the first female president of the APA. And I do want to go over the APA for a moment. It is the American Psychological Association that is the governing board over all psychologists in the country. And of course, this is specific to America. And so if you become a licensed psychologist or even a teacher like myself, you can, well, if you're a licensed psychologist, you have to be a member of the APA. I have an option of, and I am. I'm a member of the APA as well, and there's some benefits to that. And in any experimentation that is done, they are the board that oversees you and protects you, and of course approves or disapproves all the research put forward. They push out all the research to all the members of the APA journals and journals that are published, and with all the newest data on human behavior that we collect and gather. The American Psychiatric Association, though, I want to remind you, is the one that publishes the DSM-5. I don't think you'd be asked on the AP test, but I don't know. They could throw a trick at you. But because there is biological or physiological things in that book, in the DSM-5, in our mental health book. So because of the biological nature, this is why I presume that the American Psychiatric Association is the one who publishes that book, although, of course, the American Psychological Association has a great input and part of this as well. The organizations are really one and the same. I mean, they're pretty tight together. So Mary Whiton Calkins, functionalist under William James, first female president of the APA. Charles Darwin, the same Darwin that you know, evolutionary psychology is a branch of psychology, but not one that practices in therapy. So the 5 major, well, let's get there and let's talk about evolutionary psychology, and then we'll go back to those branches because I do want to overview those, and we will as we go throughout people, of course, as well. But this is the only time that we're going to talk about evolutionary psychology. It's the study of, and this really started in the 1980s, but it's all based on Charles Darwin theory. It's the study of human behavior as it relates to evolution and personality traits, etc. So adaptation into the environment. This is the belief through the evolutionary perspective of why we behave the way that we do. We're trying to survive. We're trying to fit in. Natural selection will remove the people and the traits that do not cause one to be able to reproduce. If you see a question on evolutionary psychology, know these key words. And know as well, I'd like to add to this, let's put reproduction. Trying to produce offspring that will carry on one's traits and pass them on to the next generation. Really, this is what survival is about under the evolutionary perspective. We got to be able to keep the things that allow us to be able to adapt into the environment, the behaviors that allow us to adapt into the environment. Oh, here's a good question. Who is the cousin of Charles Darwin who came up with the heritability theory on intelligence? I don't know if this guy is I don't know if I put him on our list or not. But let's see if you can get it. Heritability genius, cousin of Charles Darwin. It is, and let's go ahead and write this on here, Sir Francis Galton. And heritability genius. Oh man, how am I gonna spell that? Heritability. No, I think there's an A in there. Heritability. Got it. Genius. I'm not a genius. Heritability genius is where intelligence is passed down innately from generation to generation. See how this connects to his cousin's theory of evolutionary psychology? Booyah. Yep, that's what we're talking about. All right. Oh, you know what? I think it's time to get those cheaters. Oh, yeah. Here's what I want you to do. Right above Charles Darwin's name, I want you to draw a line right over here. See where I'm moving my mouse? Just draw a little line, okay? And then I want you to scribble it out. So just kind of scribble on it. Like you made a mistake and started writing there. A cheater would never pick up on this. They would never pick up on this. So we're going to get them cheaters right here. So draw a line, a little bit of scribble. Dorothea Dix, significant contributions to mental hospitals and really pushed the government to invest more money. Mental hospitals were in bad shape prior to the 1950s, and we're going to see deinstitutionalization take place here during the 1950s. But anyway, so Dorothea Dix went forward. She is the one who caused a revolution in the mental hospitals for getting more care, more money, more hospitals built. Over 30 more hospitals were built, or 20 to 30 more hospitals were built under her movement for people who had mental health problems. So significant contributions from Dorothea Dix. Margaret Washburn was the first to receive her PhD, and her theories led to behaviorism as well. She wrote a book called The Animal Mind, and this was a book about behavior and focused on overt behaviors that influence one's personality. And this is the work that Skinner and Watson are going to later look at that will be used to help influence the development of behaviorism, which we will talk in great detail. I'm kind of going over these people pretty quickly. I don't think that there's a good chance that you'll see most of these people who I've gone over so far to this point on the AP exam. The ones that I think we will spend a much greater deal of time on. But I just want to refamiliarize you with these names. They are important. They made significant contributions. There are more females today that get PhDs in psychology than males, and she's the first. She broke open that door because remember, Mary Calkins tried, deserved it, couldn't, and so with movements of equality and fairness, Margaret Washburn was able to break down that barrier and receive her doctorate. That's her big contribution. Hello, my name is Amy. I'm pretty angry. Hey, I am Mace Windu. Why are you so angry, Amy? You look like a pretty attractive lady to me. Hey, what do you think? You ever date a Jedi? No. I've never dated a Jedi. Are you asking me on a date? Well, yes, I'm asking you on a date. What do you think? Will you go to prom with me? Okay, I would love to. Ah, what is wrong with your? Yeah, I gotta go. It happens to me every time. I just don't understand. Oh yeah, get your groove on. Talk, talk, talk. All right, so the part of the brain that allows you to be able to talk to others is Broca's area, right? Discovered by Paul Broca. Hey, there's our person connection. I told you we wouldn't be going over too much of the brain, but where there's parts of the brain named after people, why not get it in here? And Broca's and Wernicke's, which we'll get to next, are both kind of heavily tested concepts. So Broca's area is on the left hemisphere, or the left side of your brain. And that's where we produce language. Actually, we're going to talk about Michael Gonzaga next, and we'll get the left brain, right brain, hemispheric specialization kind of stuff. But know that Broca's area is in your left hemisphere. And let's go ahead and add this. It is also location, and this is important, it is in your frontal lobe. Okay, so left frontal lobe is Broca's area. It allows you to talk. Think of a broken record, because if your Broca's area was broken, you would sound really funny kind of coming out. Or you probably don't even know what a record is. A CD. Broken. Do you even know what a CD is? Broken iPod. I don't even know. Does that work for you guys? Okay, broken iPod. It would come out sounding really kind of funny. I don't even know if that would work. So, no location, know what it is. Paul Broca, Broca's area. You guys are solid. Good. Michael Gonzaga is the one who did research on split brain surgery, right? So we have epileptic seizures that move from one side of the brain to the next. To stop that epileptic seizure, they cut the corpus callosum right down the middle so the sides can no longer communicate with one another, and then the seizure will stop going across. Hemispheric specialization was discovered as a result of this surgery, and that is a differentiation between the left brain and the right brain. So let's talk left brain first and do a very dull gray color, because everything on the left is kind of more or less creative than the right side. So we'll just stick to very plain black and grays over here. So we have kind of the L's that you can associate with L for left brain: language, logic, which is going to include like mathematical and science type of knowledge, where there is one right way to solve a problem. You're not doing really divergent type of thinking. It's just very straightforward thinking. Your left brain, your IQ is largely testing your left brain. Not all of it, not entirely, but largely your left brain. And the left brain controls the right side of your body. So remember that as well. And I do want to go over what the side effects are from someone who has split brain surgery in just a moment also. So right brain then is your creative side, musical side. Holistic thinking is kind of big picture, divergent type of thinking with spatial awareness, being able to take in your surroundings. So you have a lot more going on just looking at one aspect of a problem. You can look at multiple aspects of the problem, and the right brain controls the left side of your body. This is known, again, as hemispheric specialization. You could very well be asked a question about that on your exam on Monday. Well, of course you could. That's why we're going over it, or I wouldn't be going over it at all, right? So actually, let's go to Roger Sperry next and talk about the split brain surgery. So corpus callosum is cut, connects left brain and right brain hemisphere. Let's insert something here. Let's see what kind of got a clip art. Ooh, here's a pig. I don't know. First thing that comes up. Let's put a pig right here. Oink. And let's see. Oh, this chicken looks kind of cool. And here's the chicken. Okay. So when the hemispheres are separated, and I'm told to stare in the center of these two animals. So with my right eye is seeing a chicken and my left eye is seeing a pig. Okay, with the right eyeball, remember that that optic nerve goes to the left side of your occipital lobe. So I'm seeing the chicken with my right eye. It goes over to my left side. Left side produces language, so I can say the word chicken. But I cannot draw a chicken, because art and creativity is with the right brain. And this message is never getting over to the right brain, so it can't produce it. If I am looking at the pig with my left eye, that pig goes over to the right side of my brain, where I'm able to draw the pig, but I cannot speak the pig. And remember in the video that we watched with the guy that had the split brain surgery, he was kind of like, well, why'd you draw all that? He's like, I don't know. I don't know why I drew it. I just drew it. That's split brain surgery, the side effects from split brain surgery. So if you know hemispheric specialization and you understand differentiations between the two sides, then you should be able to critically think through the split brain surgery question and hopefully do okay on that question as you see it. All right, and I think we got one more biological person that I would like to go over. Yes, one more biological person, and that was Carl Wernicke. And this is Wernicke's area, where you have the comprehension and understanding of language. Left hemisphere, so all language left side, language left, language left, language left, language left, language left. All right, specific location here. Anybody know what lobe? Nice, that is correct. Oh, well, you were wrong, but yeah, you got it right. Nice job. It is the temporal lobe. It is right next to your ear, the temporal lobe, where you perceive auditory sensation and perception, right? So if you're understanding what other people are saying, you're perceiving that inside of your temporal lobe. Boom. All right? You know what? I think it's time to get them cheaters. Hey, Kennedy, come here. Kennedy, come here real quick. Kennedy, come here. Okay, hey, there you are. Okay, hey, you know what a cheater is? What does it mean if you cheat? Is cheating good?
No.
No, we should never cheat, right? So we got to get them cheaters. Will you sing a song with me? We're going to get them cheetahs. Yeah, yeah, we're going to get them cheetahs. We're going to get them cheetahs. Yeah, yeah, we're going to get them cheetahs. All right, cheetahs, you're going down right now. You are going down. Tell them they're going down. Hey, you're starting to make me think that you might be a cheater the way that you're acting right now. All right, here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to do. Right above Wernicke. This is a good one. This is a good one, right? Right. Hey, stop. Right above Wernicke. However old you are, -3. However old you are, -3. How old are you, Kennedy?
6.
Okay, you're 6. So what's 6 minus 3?
6. He's 4. No, 3.
Okay, good. Okay, so you're gonna write that number right above the W on Wernicke. All right, the cheaters will never figure this out. They will never figure this out unless they're the same age as you. But we'll play that risk. We're gonna get them later. Don't you worry. But I bet they're not the same age as you. Cheaters like to go after people. Cheaters like to go after people that are young. What? What are you gonna go do? Yeah, I'm gonna keep my eye on you. All right, back to our lesson.
No.
All right, let's get to sensation and perception now. So we're moving out of biological into unit 4. We'll come back to personality later. So Fechner, we're going to talk sensation and perception. So sensation is pulling the information in. Perception is then making sense of this information through your basic 5 senses, right? So an absolute threshold is the weakest amount of stimuli you need in the environment to be able to know that it's present, to be able to hear it, to be able to see it, to be able to taste it. So remember, for a candle flame, for the average person, it is 30 miles away on a clear, dark, flat horizon. The 50-50 rule is this, that when that test is given, 50% of the people will be able to see it and detect that candle 50% of the time. But it's the very weakest point at which you can visualize the candle. Okay? For auditory, it was a watch ticking at 20 feet away. If you move that watch 21 feet away, we go beyond your threshold and you can't hear it. So people have different thresholds. This is just the average, is the absolute threshold in these tests. But again, here's the definition. It's the weakest amount of stimuli. And a stimulus, again, is anything in the environment. We're going to come back to that when we talk about stimuli and classical conditioning. It is anything in the environment that you can taste, touch, see, smell, or hear, or if we use our scientific terms, that affects our gustatory, tactile, olfactory, visual, and auditory senses. So those are absolute thresholds. And for these 5, for olfactory, it is perfume in an apartment. For visual, it is a candle flame from 30 miles away. Auditory is a tick of a watch from 20 feet. Gustatory is going to be sugar in water, 2 gallons of water, teaspoon of sugar in 2 gallons of water. And then tactile sense is a bee's wing dropping from 1 centimeter onto your cheek. You might be asked just to identify the stimuli. I don't think you'd have to know specifics in any of those absolute threshold things. Just noticeable difference connects to absolute thresholds. It is the difference that you're able to detect when a stimulus has changed. So if you have this sugar and water, and I add another teaspoon, well, actually coffee would make more sense. So let's use something that you would actually maybe put sugar in. So you're drinking coffee. You say, yeah, please put some sugar in my coffee. And they put a teaspoon. And you don't taste anything. Well, you haven't noticed that a difference has been made. So please put in another teaspoon. They put another one. Okay, I taste the sugar now. That's the just noticeable difference. It took you 2 teaspoons of sugar to notice that there was a change in the stimulus that has been present. So this is the stimulus changing and the smallest change that you can detect within that stimulus. And write these things down. Remember, you need to write everything that's on the screen. So let's just go through another couple examples so you can get comfortable with just noticeable difference. My favorite is with volume. I think it's really easy to understand because we all have televisions in our house or an iPod or any device that is going to be able to have volume where you can turn it up, right? And if you have volume, let's say between 1 and 50, so 50 is the peak of the volume, 0's not on at all, and you're at volume 15, and you say turn it louder, so you go from 15 to 18. And if you can't tell it got louder, well, you haven't noticed that a difference has been made. So you haven't just noticed the difference. If we go from 15 to 20, and you go, oh, it just got louder, like we're doing a test on you, yeah, it just got louder, then that is your just noticeable difference for volume. I want to skip 2 slides because I want to come back to Hubel and Wiesel. Let's go to Ernst Weber because Weber connects directly to just noticeable difference. All right. So Weber's law is this. It's the formula used to calculate that change. So if for volume, let's say we go from 15 to 20, which would be a, I don't know, what is that? That's a 33% increase, somewhere like that. Then that would be the percentage that we need to just notice the difference. For weight, it is actually 2% for the average person. So if you're holding 100 pounds, you need 2 pounds added to it to notice that a change has been made for the average person. And if you have 500 pounds, like you're really, really strong, you would have to add, 10 pounds to notice the weight has been added. If you got this big, bulky dude lifting 500 pounds. Is that even possible? I don't know. You lift 500 pounds, and we add 8 pounds to you. The guy would notice no difference. He wouldn't know because we haven't hit the 2% calculation for Weber's law. So it's just connected to just noticeable difference. Make that connection in your head, and you'll be totally good. There is another law, but let's go back to Gustav Fechner now. Fechner's law is this. The basic principle of Fechner's law is this, and you might want to write this. The greater magnitude of something, the more of an increase you're going to need to notice this change. So if we have the volume super loud, like at 80, if I go from 80 to 81, you're not going to notice a change in the sound because it's already super loud. Or if I go from 80 to 85, you're not going to notice a change because it's super loud already. But if I'm at 10 and I go to 15, you're going to notice a change. That's Fechner's law. So Fechner's law is this. The greater magnitude, the more you have of something, the greater increase you're going to need to notice a change. If I have a whole cup of sugar in a gallon of water and I add a tablespoon, you're not going to notice that I added any more sugar. But if I have a teaspoon of sugar and I add a tablespoon, you're going to notice that there's more sugar, right? That's Fechner's law. So Fechner law is connected to Weber's law. It's connected to absolute thresholds and just noticeable difference. All this goes together, and that's why I kind of bounce this around a little bit. Okay, now let's go to Hubel and Weisel. We just went over this in class on Thursday, and this was the discovery of feature detectors inside the occipital lobe in the visual cortex. And we talked about how you have different feature detectors. You have faces that are recognizing faces, and then you have also feature detectors that help you just recognize objects. What curdling screams from the other room. Let's go check it out. Oh, so I'm going to use my feature detectors right now to detect the straight edge right here. Oh, and now I'm going to use my feature detectors to detect my daughter's face. What are you screaming about?
I'm trying to get this.
What?
I'm trying to get this out.
No, we're not getting that out. Why do you want that out?
Because I want to.
Well, give me a reason.
I just want to play with it.
Is it because you're a cheater? We don't like cheetahs, huh? Hey, will you sing We're Gonna Get Them Cheetahs? We're gonna get them cheetahs.
Stop!
Hey, sorry about that. So the other feature detectors and know these things, straight lines, patterns, any curvatures, those cells are specifically going to fire to those, and it helps you recognize things very quickly in your environment. All right. Let's go down to now Franz Mesmer and Ernst Hogard, both contributors to the idea of hypnosis. Hypnosis is largely used in a psychoanalytic therapy, not by any other therapist, because the psychoanalytics believe that they can get into your unconscious mind and pull out repressed memories while you're in an a hypnotic state. Hypnosis is a very, very relaxed state where you are, it's very similar to the same brain waves when you are in deep meditation or when you're falling asleep in stage one sleep. So we have beta waves, which are the most active, going into alpha as we transition into hypnosis. All right. So under hypnosis, here's what generally happens. You are prone to doing whatever you are told to do. And we call this suggestibility. And that's it. Because you're in such a relaxed state, kind of out of it, if I ask you to bark like a dog, you'll bark like a dog. If I ask you to get up and dance like a chicken, guess what? You're going to get up and dance like a chicken. And if I ask you to answer a question like, who do you have a crush on? Guess what? You're going to tell me who you have a crush on. That is suggestibility. And this is very similar to what happens under the influence of some drugs as well. You are more open and prone to doing what people are going to tell you to do. Hypnosis can also be used to block pain. Remember, all pain is perceived in your parietal lobe. And it is possible to block that channel under hypnosis by me suggesting that you will no longer feel pain. And we watch videos of a guy sticking his arm in ice. But suggestibility is that key. And if you see hypnosis on an FRQ, I would almost guarantee that if you write the word suggestibility, you're going to be getting the point. When people suggest things to you, you're more likely to do them. And that's the key to hypnosis. And there are a lot of different theories about it. We're going to learn more about hypnosis when we do it at the end of the year. Which is, coming up pretty soon here, right? All right, now we're going to get into our learning unit, and we'll get to Albert Bandura. All right, now we're going to start with behaviorism, the movement that came after psychoanalysis. We'll come to psychoanalysis later, but psychoanalysis by Sigmund Freud was the first modern approach that was created, and then behaviorism sometime later. Behaviorism all rests around the idea that the environment and your behaviors affect you and your personality more than anything else. Albert Bandura is a social learning theorist within the behavioral movement that believes society largely impacts, through social interaction, impacts our personality and shapes and molds our behaviors. So that's just social learning theory, learning through other people. And this would include anything like specific behaviors, like we'll see with the Bobo doll, and aggression, or it might even be anxiety, that you observe your mother as a very anxious person growing up or handling situations certain ways, and you learn to do the same. Or you learn how to talk a certain way. You learn how to do activities in a certain way. That is social learning theory. The Bobo doll experiment is a big one. It's one of those top 10 in psychology that we learned about, where you had college students acting as the Confederates go into a room and play with toys with a Bobo doll in the middle of the room. There were little kids outside who believed that they were just waiting for their turn to play next, but they could see through this glass window what was going on inside the room. They had the Confederates play extremely violent with the toys, specifically Bobo, throwing him up, speaking to him aggressively, kicking him, punching him. And then they would let the little kids in to see what they would do. That was the experimental group. Well, the kids copied the behavior that they saw. They were just as aggressive, if not even more so, than the adults were. In the control group, where the Confederates played very nicely with the toys, the kids did the same. So it was monkey see, kind of monkey do. When we learn through watching others, we call that observational learning. When we copy the behavior, that then becomes specifically the term modeling. But these are both terms that Albert Bandura came up with and proved in his hypothesis with the Bobo doll experiment. If you're writing about modeling in an FRQ, make sure you include the observational piece, the watching, and then the copying. You would have to do both to get the point. Observational learning, you could just have the watching with the example, but you would want to make sure that you give specific examples and maybe even multiple examples, like we saw with the mock exam and James driving the car. Because driving the car wasn't sufficient enough, you had to say parallel parking or backing up or turning a blinker when you're turning right, pressing your blinker, whatever it might be, but it needed to be something specific. So FRQs, just be very, very specific. Albert Bandura also came up with our golden term, self-efficacy, which I'm hoping that you have developed over the course of these last few months, a high self-efficacy for your performance on this test on Monday. Self-efficacy is the view in your own ability, the belief in your own ability. And it can be in specific areas of your life, the belief in your own ability with this test that you're taking, in school and academics, in some certain sport. And if you have a high self-efficacy, that means you have a high belief in your ability, and you're likely to perform better as a result. If you think lowly of yourself, you're likely to perform at a lower level. So the way that we view ourselves does affect our behavior, and this is self-efficacy. And this is learned also, Albert Bandura will say, from our experiences within the specific environment. The third term he came up with was reciprocal determinism. Anytime you see the word determinism, we're going to talk about something determining your personality. Psychic determinism is the unconscious determining your personality. Environmental determinism is the environment determining your personality. Reciprocal determinism is three things that are reciprocating back and forth to each other. Reciprocate means to come back at. So if I'm nice to you and you reciprocate that, you're going to be nice back to me. So we have three things that are reciprocating. It's your behavior, the environment, and then your thinking. Someone knocks the books out of your hands in the hallway. That's the environment piece. That's going to affect your behavior. You might stand up and say, "What are you doing, man?" And that's going to then affect your thinking. You might start thinking worse. It's going to cause the environment to respond back to you. Now he might get more aggressive, and then before you know it, a fight is broken out. Well, all of this has led to your aggression, all three of these things. Without the thinking or without the behavior, without the environment, missing one of these pieces, it wouldn't have led to this type of experience. So reciprocal determinism, you must include all three of these things to have that piece. So Albert Bandura contributed quite a bit to social learning theory with modeling, specifically self-efficacy and reciprocal determinism. Let's do this. Let's do another cheating test here. See this O right here in cognition? Just color it in. Color it in. I don't know that a cheater would ever recognize that. And let's do one more. So color this O right here and go up here and color the O in copy. We're gonna get them cheetahs. Oh yeah, we're gonna get them cheetahs. I'm gonna skip past John B. Watson. Actually, let's do this. Let's establish that John B. Watson is the father of behaviorism. Okay, in response to Sigmund Freud's unconscious, says Freud, "You're hogwash. We can't see inside the mind. That's the problem that behaviorists have." And let's just talk about the behaviorist theory a little bit more. They rely on empirical research. So only what we can see with our eyes do we trust with behaviorism. Overt behaviors that can be observed. And this is true with any mental illness as well. Mental illness, if you go to a behaviorist, they're going to want to see the behaviors that you're doing, see your environment, and they're going to change those things to reduce the symptoms of your illness. And this works quite effectively with anxiety disorders, for example. So if you are terrified of speaking in front of people, they're going to get you comfortable with that by having you experience more and more of that in your environment to reduce the anxiety. They're not going to cognitively convince you of anything. They're not going to look into your childhood to try to see what might have caused that, like a psychoanalytic. They're not going to prescribe you a medication, an anti-anxiety pill to reduce your anxiety speaking in front of people. They're going to get you to practice in front of people. They're going to get you to change your behavior, okay? But I want to skip past the little baby Albert experiment and come back to that, and I want to go to Ivan Pavlov, because Pavlov's really where it starts. Pavlov was a Russian physiologist before Watson. Watson takes his research and applies it to human beings, okay? So he came up with classical conditioning, which his experiment was done on dogs. Classical conditioning is involuntary learning, which means we are not in control of it. You don't control this. And I know some of you are still struggling with classical conditioning, so I'm going to try to give you kind of maybe a different perspective of this a little bit. If you see the word conditioned, that word means that you've learned something. So if I have been conditioned to do anything, I've learned to do that thing. So when I see the word unconditioned, that means the behavior has been unlearned, which means I was never taught it. I just naturally did it. So for example, if I hear a loud bang, I'm going to flinch. Nobody needs to teach me how to do that. I'm automatically going to do that. So unconditioned means I didn't have to learn it. Conditioned means I had to learn the behavior. Okay? So the unconditioned stimulus is meat, and the unconditioned response is salivate in his experiment. So what this means is that this is an unlearned behavior, and response means behavior. Stimulus is anything in the environment that you can taste, touch, see, smell, or hear. Okay? So when a dog is presented meat, which is the stimulus, it starts salivating. This is unlearned. It's unconditioned. Nobody teaches a dog how to do that. Nobody does. A neutral stimulus is one that doesn't evoke any response. It doesn't cause you to do anything. So when we would ring bells in front of the dog or a tuning fork, the dog just sits there. It doesn't do anything. But when we pair the bell with the meat, the dog can learn to respond now the same way it did to the meat to the bell. And so the bell will become the conditioned stimulus, and the conditioned response will be salivating to that bell. Now this is learned. This had to be trained. A dog would never naturally salivate to a bell, nor would a human being. But it learned it because of an association that was made, a pairing between the bell and the meat. So if you get this scenario on the AP test where it kind of explains all these things is happening to a human, it says, what is the conditioned response? You have to think to yourself, what is the learned behavior? Because that's the response. What is learned? What is not natural here? What had to be learned? If you see what is the unconditioned response, you got to think, okay, what's the natural response here that's occurring? All right? And just to give you another example of this working on humans, me and my dearest older child worked on a classical conditioning experiment ourselves this afternoon with Peppa Pig. So I will take you to that now. Enjoy. All right, so we're going to show you some classical conditioning now on human behavior because it doesn't just work on dogs and salivation. We're learning about humans, right, Kennedy? All right, so Kennedy does not know what's going on right now. Are you ready? Are you ready? Ah! Ah! Okay, that was an unconditioned, unlearned response. Okay, my loud noise was the unconditioned stimulus. Her response was unlearned, a natural response to a loud noise. All right, now let's pair a neutral stimulus with that loud noise. Our neutral stimulus is Peppa the Pig. All right, ready? Ah! 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 Okay, so now those have been paired together multiple times. Oh no.
Who gave that to me?
Okay, let's finish our experimentation. Then I'll do it with you. No. Wait. Let's wait on the mac and cheese. Okay.
That's good.
Hold on. Okay, you ready? So now she has been conditioned to be afraid of Peppa Pig. Kennedy, look at who's coming around the corner. Kennedy, look who's coming around the corner. Bingo. Classical conditioning. She was conditioned and learned to be afraid of Peppa Pig. Give you what? Now I gotta go classical condition. That one's a little behind. Look what she did. She went into the cupboard and opened a bunch of macaroni and cheeses and poured the cheese in there. Gross. So now we go back to John B. Watson. Here we go. So the father of behaviorism. All right. Environment is everything. In fact, John B. Watson believed that if you could control the environment, you could control the person. So environment was everything. Well, he looked at Pavlov's experiment with dogs, said this is true for humans and I can prove it. And this is where he did the little baby Albert experiment. So he took orphan babies, as you recall, one of them being little baby Albert, and he found something that Albert was naturally terrified, just like any kid would be, just kind of like what I did with Kennedy. And this was this loud, clangy gong. Bang! And the little baby would start crying and be very afraid and scared. This was unconditioned. This was unlearned, a natural response that anyone would have to a loud noise being slammed behind your head. Even if it happened right now, you would do the same thing as this little baby would do. You'd freak out. You'd go into fight or flight mode. And who knows how you might respond. Well, the neutral stimulus was this little animal, this little white rat that John B. Watson had that he let Albert play with, and Albert really didn't respond to the rat. He just kind of looked at it and just kind of observed it walking around on and crawling on Albert. Albert wasn't bothered by it at all. Well, with the association between the two, the pairing, so hitting a loud gong, bang, and then white rat, bang, white rat, bang, white rat, eventually little Albert learns to respond to the white rat the same way it does to the gong. So once we present the white rat all by itself and Albert is scared, conditioning has taken place. And conditioning is a learned behavior, remember. So the conditioned stimulus becomes the white rat, and the conditioned response becomes this feeling of fear. If you're ever asked a question on the AP test that says, when does conditioning take place? It's the first time the conditioned response occurs to the neutral stimulus, or what once was the neutral stimulus. So that is the little baby Albert experiment. Probably unethical, right? Causing kids to be afraid of things that they shouldn't be afraid of. That's pretty cruel. And then we get to the other classical conditioner, John Garcia. John Garcia did a taste aversion experiment on rats and poisoning different colored waters, and he would pair these with lights and tones to see if they would avoid the water. And well, sure enough, they did. With food, and this applies to human beings, it's not the food that will make us sick. It's something in the food. It might be mold, it might be a virus, it might be E. coli or some type of germ that's in the food, from the cafeteria or whatever it might be. So the unconditioned stimulus is that, we'll just say mold, and that would naturally make you sick if you ate some mold that was unhealthy for you. Well, if you pair that with something neutral that you like macaroni and cheese, so mold is in this macaroni and cheese, and then you get really sick afterwards, you can form that conditioned response, which is going to be learned now. This is a learned response to the neutral stimulus, and now you get sick or you feel nauseous or disgusted every time you get around macaroni and cheese. So this is classical conditioning as well. In fact, the last three people we've talked about, and this is a question you could see on the AP exam, Ivan Pavlov, John B. Watson, and John Garcia are all experimenters of classical conditioning. Garcia does it on rats, it applies to humans. Ivan does it on dogs, it applies to humans. Watson does it on a baby, and then of course applies to humans as well. So clump those three together. Know that they're all behaviors, but clump them in the classical conditioning arena. All right? And then off to the side here, just put a food that you are, that just kind of grosses you out. Just as a personal example of maybe some taste aversion for yourself. Make up one if you don't have one, but go ahead and write a food over here that personally makes you sick and nauseous. And I want to cover one more person here before we end part one of this video. I know you're sad. I know you're extremely sad that this is occurring. Rescorla is where we end here. Did had some comments about classical conditioning. Thought that Pavlov dumbed human beings down too much. That said, no, we're smarter than dogs, and we don't respond like animals do because we have cognition abilities. We think, and so he calls this the contingency model, where if a human being can reliably predict that a clanging noise is not going to occur after I see an animal, then I'm not going to get scared when I see this animal. If I can reliably predict that I'm not going to get sick when I eat macaroni and cheese, then I'm not going to have classical conditioning. See, Pavlov and Garcia just kind of said if you associate this enough times, no matter what it is, and same with Watson, we can create and control this person. Well, Rescorla says, no, there's contingency here because of our ability to think, unlike basic animals have that ability. And that, my friends, concludes part 1, of which I think will be 3 parts. We'll continue starting with, when you get to part 2, starting with operant conditioning. We're going to continue in behaviorism, but I have a lot that I want to say about B.F. Skinner, because you're going to see something from him on the AP exam, and you're going to see something classical conditioning more than likely as well. Now, what we just covered, I don't know. It could be Rescorla. It could be Pavlov's dogs. All right, good work. Part 1, it's over. Take a break, and we'll see you when part 2 begins.